Hear these words from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 19. Jesus entered Jericho and was passing through it. A man was there named Zacchaeus. He was a chief tax collector and was rich. He was trying to see who Jesus was, but on account of the crowd he could not because he was short in stature. So he ran ahead and climbed a sycamore tree to see him because he was going to pass that way. When Jesus came to that place, he looked up and said to him, "Zacchaeus, hurry and come down, for I must stay at your house today." So he hurried down and was happy to welcome him. All who saw it began to grumble and said, "He has gone to be the guest of one who is a sinner." Zacchaeus stood there and said to the Lord, "Look, half my possessions, Lord, I will give to the poor, and if I have defrauded anyone of anything, I will pay back 4 times as much." Then Jesus said to him, "Today salvation has come to this house, because he too is a son of Abraham. For the Son of Man came to seek out and save the lost." On Monday, March 25th, I was on Springfield Avenue out here, and I went past Winberry's, and I walked into the Weight Watchers storefront. I had driven by there plenty of times over the last 8 or 9 years while I've been at this church, but I had never gone in. But I decided the time was right that Monday to make a change. Now, I don't know how many of you have been to a Weight Watchers studio, that's what they call them now, but it's a meeting, a motivational speaker who's a group leader. Now, I go to a lot of meetings. They're called worship. And I'm in worship services 5 times a week, maybe, at least, between the different communities at Drew Theological School and at Yale Divinity School and here, of course, at our church. I just came from a couple days of worship with the UCC churches in southern New England. So I'm used to groups of people getting together. There's silence, there's singing, there's praying, there's proclamation, there are sacraments, and people feel things. We come away, we have emotional experiences sometimes. And so I went into that meeting a little skeptical, thinking, well, do they really know how to do a meeting anyway? A little judgy, and I might get some superficial experience from it. After the 40 minutes, the leader sits down with new members to talk with them about the program. And Shivani was her name, our leader. She begins by looking at us and saying, "You are welcome here." And I need to say at the beginning, you are beautiful. And there is nothing about you that needs to be fixed for some mistake was made. We're here because we all want to make our lives better. And suddenly, my eyes filled with tears, and I thought, what is going on here? Unconditional love at a Weight Watchers meeting? I was surprised, I was humbled, and years of judgment, and saying to myself, I can't do this. Not always having the healthiest self-image. Something inside me kind of snapped, and I was caught off guard. I was surprised by grace. Could I show myself forgiveness for this part of me that's always felt weak or insecure, hopeless? Whatever I did wouldn't be enough. Could I show myself some grace? You never know what one conversation, one act of kindness, one moment of sharing grace with someone will lead to. We see it time and time again in these Bible stories. We know it to be true in our own lives when we allow ourselves to be present in the moment, risking what we had constructed or thought about ourselves or had created about a narrative, a story, a particular situation, was not really the whole picture. We have 2 gospel stories today that tell stories of recovery, both spiritual and physical recovery. In the story Patty read from the Gospel of Mark, the woman who had for many years been suffering, in fact, a woman of some means who, it says, the Bible says, spent all of her money trying to be cured, was told by Jesus, "Your faith has made you well. What was her faith? I believe she had power. She had faith in a power beyond herself. So Jesus says to her, your faith has made you well, which implies healing and wholeness is something of a two-way street. You can receive healing, but something in you needs to be ready for that change. You want to see that change and accept that new truth, that new reality. Or here's another way of saying it. If you're interested in recovery, you've got to work the program. And anyone who's been in a recovery program is very familiar with that phrase. For me, in my own quest of eating healthier, it means taking a few minutes out of every day to write down what I'm eating, so I can bring to mind and take some accountability for what is going into my mouth. For others, it's other types of accountability, being in a support group, talking to a sponsor, meeting with a therapist, remembering to take your medication, getting to the gym, avoiding certain situations that could cause you or others harm. Working the program means you've been given a vision of what life could look like, a new truth that has been revealed to you. But being on this journey also reminds me that there are truths in our lives that sometimes we're just not ready to hear. We're not ready to accept. It might not be the right time. We're too young or too stubborn or too inexperienced, or we haven't been through what we need to get through in order to truly apprehend what the new reality can look like. Since that first meeting in March, on March 28th, I've lost maybe 57, 58 pounds. And thank you. And I still have quite a ways to go, but people have been coming up saying, Mark, you look great, you look great. And a good colleague of mine, I've known her 20-some years at Drew, said to me the other week, Mark, this is great, you're losing weight again. And it's the truth. I am losing weight again, as I told the choir. This is the third time in my life that I've gone on this weight loss journey in a serious way. And now I'm at the place in my life, am I at the place in my life where I can finally apprehend this truth that I can make it work? Is this time the time I'm ready? Did I hit my bottom, as Julie mentioned in the prayer about her nephew? That's a discernment process. But I'm hoping that I can work the tools and work the program and believe I can do it. It's not just a physical recovery, but a spiritual recovery. I was at a Holy Service Day, Yom Kippur, a few weeks ago, and the rabbi said, everybody here tries to go to a physical every once in a while, right? You go in for your physical and see the doctor. She said, well, now you're here and you're having your spiritual. You've come to see the rabbi, you've come to the faith community, and everybody might skip their spirituals, but you need to be here for that. So I keep thinking to myself, it's a lot like support group members say to one another, keep coming back. Keep coming back. It's a road. In the story from the Gospel of Luke, Zacchaeus needed healing as well, but it was healing of a different kind. You see, in the earlier story, the woman's sickness made her financially poor. This tax collector's sickness made him rich. Zacchaeus, the privileged who worked for the Roman Empire, would have been despised by his people as a traitor, making a wealthy living off of his own community. Zacchaeus suffered from a sickness caused by his corrupt job, the living the high life off the backs of the poor. But Zacchaeus had a literal come to Jesus moment. After his encounter with Jesus, he said he would change his ways, not making wealth and greed the centerpiece of his life, but rather generosity and fairness. Jesus says, salvation has come to your house, or I might interpret that as, you have recovered what it means to be human, to live with respect and balance, sharing with the community. You're on the road to recovery. I think we all need to be in recovery from something. I'm struck by the woman, the unnamed woman, who touched the hem of Jesus' robe. and that tax collector up in the tree. I'm struck by their courage, the courage to make a change in their lives. How do we decide in our own lives, enough is enough? I need to start living differently. The courage in the stories happened when they were in contact with Jesus, with a presence they believed could change the circumstances of their lives. No one else saw that woman for who she was in the crowd. The disciples said, Jesus, what do you mean, who touched you? You were basically getting a blessing at Christ Church. You were mobbed, people touching each other all over the place. But he sensed her. He felt her presence. She took power from him. She used her agency for the power to be healed. It's one of the central meanings of Christianity to have an encounter with a power so full of love and forgiveness that our lives are fundamentally altered. It's why we come to church, to be reminded that we are so loved, so worthy of belonging here. We matter in this place. If we receive and experience that transformational message, hopefully then we can go out and be agents of change to whoever we meet, touching their lives with healing, loving power. But please, don't think these are one-off fairy tale stories. The woman gets healed, the tax collector repents, they live happily ever after. I don't think it's what the stories mean or their point. Too many of us, and me included, feel sometimes that if that perfect moment can just happen to us, if we just get that particular healing, if we just reach that particular state of being born again or nirvana, or get that job, or get that perfect marriage or house or friendship, you fill in the blank, then we made it. We won't have to worry anymore. Journey is over. But the truth, of course, is that these stories don't end with the encounter with Jesus. This is just the beginning of their journey. Recovery is a process. Salvation, a lifelong journey that is worked out day by day. And I want to give a shout out to John Wesley, founder of Methodism, who, he might be on one of these stained glass windows. I believe he is, which is pretty cool. He had this theological concept of moving on to perfection. This was his idea, that we never reach a point in our life, in this life, when we can say, I've made it, I've reached perfection. He says, no, rather we're always moving on to a more perfect understanding of what it means to love God and love our neighbor. The well-known Serenity Prayer, written by theologian Reinhold Niebuhr, reminds us that there are things in our lives we cannot change. And to be in recovery means grappling with the things that we cannot change. Whether they are mundane things, like getting our kids to clean their room. Your room is pretty clean, Keith, so I won't. Whether it means that Brenda is finally in the office going to receive music from me on time for the weekly bulletin. But it's also profound things we cannot change. We can't change our childhood, the way we were treated by our parents even. A terminal illness, a natural disaster, tragic accidents, death will come sooner or later for all of us. So the prayer says, God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change. Courage to change the things I can. And wisdom to know the difference. In a moment, we'll be invited to this table. We gather around this table of grace, a table of reconciliation. We come together as people suffering, broken, looking for a place of recovery where we can recover what it means to be human, to ourselves and to one another. This is why this community of faith is so vitally important. It's where the deep spiritual well of meaning is. Powerful symbols, metaphor are found in the ritual of the bread and the juice. We remember what it means to share one's life, to forgive. This is the place we go to learn about and experience the mystery of healing and wholeness and justice and joy. It's all right here. It's our own spiritual wellness clinic. And it's never too late to join in the road to recovery. Where does one begin on this journey, you might ask? Well, a good place to start is by hearing and believing these simple words. You are beautiful. God did not make a mistake in your creation. You are welcome here at this table because we are all welcome on this journey of recovery together. As Jesus says, and I'll say it this way, keep coming back. Keep coming back. Thanks be to God.